From the Weather NorCal Command Center, this is your morning update.
Dennis's Heating and Air Conditioning is Northern California's premier heating and air conditioning contractor. From residential housing, large commercial projects, installation to repair, sheet metal fabrication, and everything in between, we are your go-to heating and air conditioning specialist.
Good morning, everyone. Those temperatures are starting to drop. We felt that yesterday in most cases. There were still a few triple digits, especially out in Trinity County yesterday, but that's all changing. We're starting to kind of just level off here with temperatures around the same over the next few days before we see a bigger drop in our temperatures over the weekend. But speaking of the weekend, how about a chance for showers and thunderstorms in the mountains? And you know what? It's not entirely out of the question for parts of the valley to maybe see some activity as well. We'll get into that in the deeper dive here in just a bit. But looking at the longer range, I'm just not seeing much in the way of any big heat waves heading our way. More on that a little bit later. Here's a look at your Krueger's Quickcast for your Thursday, August 14th. All right, out the door this morning. Kids getting ready for the second day of school. Yes, school has started, I think, for most kids at this point. We got the overcast skies and not to mention that fog along the coast. You know, I was expecting to maybe see some clearing this afternoon, and there will be along the coast, just not as much as initially anticipated. Otherwise, you've got sunny skies for the rest of us as we take you through the morning hours. Now, there's a big batch of moisture that you can see over the Gulf of Alaska. That is significant because that's what's going to be impacting us as we go into the weekend, and that's the moisture source for the thunderstorms that we see in the forecast. Again, longer range, deeper dive coming up in a little bit here. Here's a look at your forecast winds. They're fairly calm this morning, picking up this afternoon. A little concerned about the gusty winds that we do have west of I-5 in western Tehama and Shasta counties. Otherwise, your typical afternoon breezes for the rest of the mountains. For your Friday morning, actually, typically we see those winds die down, right? We're not seeing that happen Friday morning, especially in the valley where you've got those winds gusting upwards of 20-25 miles per hour, and they're out of the north, and they probably get even stronger. In fact, they expect to get stronger Friday afternoon. So there's that fog along the coast this morning. You can see by midday, that fog isn't really burning off a whole lot, is it? There may be some breaks in the clouds. We'll call it partly to mostly cloudy skies for the coast today. Otherwise, mainly sunny skies for the rest of Northern California, including the mountains and, of course, the valley. And that fog really kind of continues to be an issue as we go into the overnight hours tonight. All right, so for your Thursday, temperatures are going to be the mid to really low to upper 90s, just depending on where you are. Redding about 99, maybe close to, if not right around 100, but Willows and Oroville in the low 90s there. 80s and 90s for the higher elevations, and we're finally breaking away from those triple digits for Trinity County with temperatures there. 80s and 90s, and you can see for the coast temperatures in the low to mid 60s for those daytime highs. Let's take a look at that 7-day forecast for the valley, and yeah, there it is. Maybe a chance for some evening overnight showers, maybe even an isolated thunderstorm for Redding and possibly even Red Bluff. We'll see. I think it's going to be a little dry out there. Yes, there's a moisture source, but it's very dry. So initially we have to really saturate that atmosphere before we really start seeing anything significant. And that's why I think the bulk of any thunderstorms over the weekend will be on the coast. And even some of the inland areas seeing a chance for showers. The coast maybe seeing some showers as well. And for Siskiyou, Modoc County, Eastern Mountains, you're also seeing that potential for thunderstorms as well for Saturday, Sunday, and then drying out. But you'll also notice we've just got that significantly cooler weather making its way into the forecast. All right, that's a look at Krueger's Quickcast. Now let's take a look at what's going on, the latest with the fires. Not a whole lot new to report here. We can see there just really aren't any heat signatures as being detected by the satellite. Big Cliff Fire, as of yesterday evening, 963 acres. Now we're up to 41% containment. The fire really hasn't grown much, if at all. The Green Fire, no reports on this fire since the 7th of the month. 99% containment as of the last report. No new reports coming in from the Butler Fire as of August 9th. Today is August 14th, just to kind of give you an idea. 96% containment there. There are a couple of other fires here that we got to just kind of keep our eyes on, especially if you live in Modoc or Lassen counties. You may be a little curious about what's going on with the Clark Fire. That's 50.7 acres at 75% containment. The good news is, and of course, really for a while, the forward progress has been stopped on that one. That's up in northwestern Lassen County, south of Bieber, east of Bernie, for example. You also have the Mountain Fire. That's at 980 acres, and that's at about 55% containment. Also, forward progress has been stopped on that one. So I just wanted to kind of give you some updates on fires we don't really necessarily have fire perimeters for, but they are certainly some fires that some of you may have your eyes on and may be a little bit concerned about as well. All right, in the meantime, let's take you to the fire forecast and what's going on with those winds. That's sponsored by Defensible Space and Brush Removal. As I mentioned, those winds are picking up this afternoon, especially west of I-5 in western Tehama and western Shasta County. Bit of a concern. That's going to really elevate that fire weather risk. And the problem is we're not really seeing those winds die down a whole lot for the valley. You can see 20, 25 mile an hour gusts even Friday morning, and even stronger for the west side of the valley come Friday afternoon. That's really, I think, going to elevate the fire weather risk even more by Friday evening and then Friday afternoon, that is. And then Saturday, looks like we may see a bit of a lull in those winds. So that fire weather risk, as we'd expect, where the stronger winds are today, west side of the valley to the north, between west of Red Bluff and Redding, for example. But then it spreads more into the valley for the rest of the valley with those higher fire weather risk here for your Friday. And then it looks like, as I mentioned, as those winds die down Friday night and even through the first half of the day on Saturday, we're going to be in that low to moderate category by midday Saturday, but the winds will most likely pick back up again Saturday afternoon. Hey, by the way, there is a free Weather NorCal app. And you know, the thing is about the Weather NorCal app, the latest one came down last week. The cool thing I like about it, you got widgets. Not only widgets on your home screen, but even your lock screen, you can have the widget for Weather NorCal. Now, the reason I really like to stress this is that the native app on a lot of the phones, they're AI generated and they don't tend to be very accurate. The Weather NorCal app, it's locally generated, right? It's not AI, it's MK, Mike Krueger generated, right? Because I generate a forecast and it goes out to all of my platforms. The app that you see here, it goes to the website, it goes to the maps that you're watching right here on this forecast, and it goes to the 24-hour streaming channel. So it goes out consistently to all locations. And not only that, you can share photos, you can get your neighborhood forecast, you can watch the video forecast, you can watch the 24-hour channel right from your phone wherever you are. You can always get the latest forecast. I do 3 updates a day, so you can always get the latest forecast right there from your phone. Check it out. Just search for Weather NorCal in your app store and you will be good to go. I wanted to show you the water vapor imagery because it should help to illustrate a few things. Number one, very dry air that's in place right now. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because I'm going to be talking about the potential for some of these showers and thunderstorms even working their way into parts of the valley. I think most of it will be in the mountains, but because the thing is, when it's very dry out, when these systems come in, especially this time of the year, it takes a while for us to saturate that atmosphere. Think of a sponge. The sponge is very dry, and then when you put water on that sponge, it takes a while for that sponge to fill up and then eventually overflow. Once that sponge overflows, that would be more of like a representation of a saturated atmosphere. So we've got to fill up that sponge first before we can really start seeing any of that rain. So typically in the valley, it takes a little bit longer, a little lower elevation. But you can see right here, this is that moisture. Now, I mentioned on social media yesterday, you're probably seeing it getting a little overhyped, unfortunately. You got to be careful with some of the sources that you look at because I did not overhype the atmospheric river potential. This has a bit of an atmospheric river characteristics. And I say that because there is a big stream of moisture, an area of moisture off over the Western Pacific that this is tapping into. But you see a bit of a spin here, another bit of a spin here. These are also breaking down at the ridge of high pressure that's giving us some of that instability. So remember I was talking about all that moisture, all right here. This is all, see the very moist conditions when you're getting into the reds, the purples, and the blues. And we're seeing a lot of that over here. So you have this stream right here. And really, honestly, now, here we are 24 hours later, doesn't look to be quite as prominent as strong. But there's that, here's all of this moisture it's tapping into, and we've got this one little stream right here. Now today, tomorrow, it's mainly going to be focused its energy and aimed at the Pacific Northwest. Now, one thing I want to point out, this is not going to be your typical atmospheric river event where you're going to see flooding and tons of rainfall. That is not the case with this one. The main thing is it will be a source of moisture for that rain. So let's progress through time. Friday. As we go into Friday, once again, mainly aimed at the Pacific Northwest, but it's beginning to take shape and begin to make its flow out towards Northern California. But also take note, we're seeing this really thin out. We're starting to lose that tap of that moisture coming in from the Western Pacific as early even as Friday. But now we have this moisture that's in place. All right, so you see what's happening by Saturday. Now we're really beginning, I mean, there still is a little bit of that flow coming in, right? But not very prominent. But you see how Saturday is really when it's at its peak, at least for Northern California, with that source of moisture. And then by the time we get into Sunday, that shifts to the south. We no longer really have that quote-unquote atmospheric river, and we still have some leftover moisture that will be in place on Sunday, and that will be the source for more thunderstorms on Sunday. And then you can see as we go into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, drier conditions. See that? That's the drier air right here. Those are the colors that we have over Northern California. So again, you're hearing the term and the phrase atmospheric river. Don't want you to think that this is going to be your typical winter event, because it won't be, okay? That's really one thing I want to point out. So you can see all of that moisture. You can see the disturbances that are kind of pushing through to our east. That is what's also helping to break down the ridge of high pressure. And keep in mind, it's also going to be cooler air that's going to be moving in, which we'll talk about that here in a second. But there's a look at Futurecast. Now remember, I was talking about yesterday the potential for some sunshine, that is, for the coast. Doesn't look like now that may be the case. I think we will see some breaks in the clouds, but not necessarily a ton of sunshine up and down the coast. You can see by tomorrow morning that fog returns and then doesn't really burn off a whole lot for the afternoon. Now, Futurecast is picking up on a few sprinkles. Remember that sponge thing I was telling you about here? Most likely anything that we see in Siskiyou County in the form of any rain, it'll most likely evaporate before reaching the ground, but maybe a straight sprinkle here and there. All right, so you can see the boundary. There's a cold front that is approaching. By the time it hits us, it's going to weaken significantly, but you can kind of see that boundary right here. So that's really an area of instability that's going to help to squeeze out some of those showers. You see where the bulk of it is, at least for Saturday morning? It's mainly to the north. But we are seeing the potential as early as Saturday morning for some light showers along the coast. Now you can see that boundary is right here. Now you notice as you head to south of that, I mean, just less and less chances of seeing that rain. But at this point, I'd say Saturday afternoon, there's a chance for thunderstorms for everyone in the mountains. Now, as this boundary pushes through sometime late in the day, Saturday night, that may squeeze out a shower or two for parts of Redding. Maybe even Red Bluff. Maybe, just maybe, an isolated thunderstorm as well. We're going to have to wait until the latest forecast model runs come out. But as of right now, you can see here, look at this. By the time we get into Sunday, so Saturday night, Sunday morning, this is midnight. You see how it's kind of pushing through. This model might be a little overly aggressive, but it is putting some of that rain in parts of the valley. And this is something I touched on yesterday, that potential. It looks a little bit more promising today as we go into Saturday night. But again, don't want to really get your hopes up too high for this being a big rainfall event. And then there you can see as we go into Sunday, there we have more thunderstorms. Remember, I was talking about still that leftover moisture. But then after that, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to dry things out again. And we're going to watch this right here. This could potentially bring us some bigger heat by the middle and latter part of next week. So let's talk about that. Right? So there you can see heat off over the desert southwest. And this, by the way, is the ridge of high pressure that gave us the heat, this past heat wave. It's now been pushed off way to the west. So we're watching to the north these pieces, pockets of energy that are breaking down from the Gulf of Alaska. So there's Saturday. There you can see that cooler air is in place. Now, as long as we have this troughing in place, that's going to keep this off to our east, and that'll keep this off to our west. We're stuck between the two areas of high pressure and heat, and as a result, our temperatures aren't going to be quite as hot. However, you see how that's kind of retreating back up to the north. We've got some more energy coming up to the west here. So this is going to allow this to possibly build in even stronger by the end of next week, which would mean temperatures back at the very least into the lower 100s for parts of the valley by Thursday, Friday of next week. It's a long way out. we can only hope that this is going to eventually kind of push a little more to the east and push this back to the east and give us cooler temperatures. We'll see what happens with this, but as of right now, doesn't look too promising that it's going to be that area of low pressure is really going to have that much of an impact. But there you can see here over the weekend, I mean, even Redding possibly struggling to get out of the 80s by the time we get into Sunday. But then you can see as we go into Monday through next week, back up to a little over 100 degrees, which is slightly above normal for this time of the year. Taking a look at those lake levels, we're down to about 67% out at Shasta Lake, but still 103% of that historical average, and even better, not only in the capacity, but also the historical averages for Trinity Lake and Lake Oroville as well. So certainly some good news there. All right, take a look at the wave heights, and you can see here as we go into this afternoon, not a big issue. The wave heights get even weaker. Lower wave heights by the time we get into your Friday. So marine forecast for your Thursday, northwest winds at about 10 to 15 knots. Northwest waves at 5 feet at about 6 seconds, and from the southwest at 3 feet at about 15 seconds. Patchy, dense fog out there in some cases. Here is your neighborhood forecast, sponsored in part by Dignity Health. We're going to start off with Trinity County neighborhood forecast. Yeah, there's that chance for thunderstorms over the weekend, cooler too, and then it starts to warm back up gradually as we go through next week. Your North Coast neighborhood forecast brought to you by Dignity Health. Temperatures in the mid-60s on average for the next 7 days. The coast, yeah, I think you'll see some showers. Nothing major, nothing heavy, but certainly a chance for some light measurable precipitation. We also have a chance for showers for the inland areas on Saturday. I think your chances for thunderstorms may be a bit slimmer, so maybe just a few sprinkles and light showers on Saturday for the inland areas. Meanwhile, your Dignity Health Siskiyou County neighborhood forecast, temperatures in the 80s, even some 90s, thunderstorms over the weekend. Modoc County, thunderstorms over the weekend with temperatures in the low 80s, slowly warming back up and drying out through next week. Your Eastern Mountains neighborhood forecast, 70s, 80s, even some 90s, 94 degrees for Susanville, 92 for Janesville. Paradise, about 88, and Shingletown, about 85 degrees. There you can see those thunderstorms on Saturday and Sunday, especially for Susanville. I think Bernie may get caught up in some of that activity as well, but to the west of that Shingletown, for example, I think your chances will be slimmer for those thunderstorms over the weekend, by the way. Here's your Valley neighborhood forecast brought to you by Dignity Health. Temperatures are going to be to the south in the low to mid-90s for today. And looking at that 7-day forecast for Chico, yeah, mid-90s, about 94 degrees. A little bit warmer on Friday, but then dropping back down again over the weekend and then slowly going back up. A little bit of a mini roller coaster ride, if you will. Temperatures around upper 90s to about 100 degrees. Some of us may touch 100. Some of us maybe just barely below 100. 97 for Red Bluff, 98 for Cottonwood, and looks like about 99 degrees for Redding. Now notice as we look at that 7-day forecast for Redding, yeah, I put the chance for some PM showers in there. So could we see a stray sprinkle, light shower Saturday evening, Saturday night? Sure, off chance for an even thunderstorm. But otherwise, mainly dry for the valley through the weekend and slowly warming back up as we take you through next week. That's your evening update. I'll be back again at noon for your latest forecast. Have a great morning.
Barr & Mudford is a top established firm here in the Northstate. Founded over a half-century ago, Barr & Mudford is protecting the rights of our neighbors and community. We take our commitment to our clients very seriously and provide a level of excellence unrivaled in the Northstate. Barr & Mudford, standing up for the rights of our neighbors and our beautiful community, serving Northern California with excellence.